Good evening, everybody. My name is Niko House, the host of the political radio show Mikasa, which you can catch right here on YouTube or on Facebook Live or on awakeradio.us at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 4 p.m. Pacific on Fridays. So many of you are aware, some of you aren't, but many of you are aware that the Republicans tried to do a last-minute power grab from the governor of North Carolina, the newly elected Democratic governor of North Carolina. However, many of you may be a little bit cloudy on the details of the situation, and more importantly, many of you may be unclear about how the Republicans went about it, which is it was a sad way that really undermined democracy, and it would undermine my faith in this particular legislature to ever do the right thing when in power and when it comes to playing politics. And this is why. As many of you know, North Carolina and a lot of the East Coast suffered from a hurricane very recently. I believe it was Hurricane Matthew. And North Carolina, specifically Fayetteville and the surrounding areas, was simply demolished by the hurricane. So obviously some emergency relief was necessary. Now, the legislature of North Carolina, the incumbents, used this disaster to introduce 15 pieces of legislation, most of them having absolutely nothing to do with the hurricane relief. Amongst these legislations and amongst this special session of the General Assembly, they tried to add 2 more Supreme Court justice seats. 2 more for absolutely no reason. Supreme Court justice seats. Of course, as most of you know, this would probably give them the Republican majority in the Supreme Court that they just recently lost. And here's why they went out of their way to try to, instead of winning their seat back at the next election, here is why they tried to essentially give or take back the seat, or add 2 more seats instead of waiting to see if they could get their majority back. It is because it was an African American male who won, so obviously the bench would become more progressive. But also, he won by 300,000 votes, and in a state race, that is absolutely huge. And so they knew that there was the state and the tide of social relations in that state are changing despite the Republican legislature maintaining a majority of the power. Also, which is the thing that has been more popular in the news, that they tried to take power away from Governor Roy Cooper, or Governor-elect Roy Cooper, before he had even come into office. He hasn't even had a chance to combat this. One of the things that they changed that will have significant weight on Democratic victories or losses in the future is the fact that North Carolina usually allows the party of the incumbent governor to maintain the Board of Elections. However, it will no longer be the case because the state legislature has changed that. Going forward, they also say that they will significantly limit the amount of employees that directly report to the governor. I mean, by thousands. It's like 80% that they will slash the amount of employees that report directly to the governor. And on top of all this, if the governor decides to appoint someone, the state legislature of North Carolina has to approve of it first, which is unprecedented and hasn't been done. So essentially, you have a legislative branch assaulting democracy and using emergency sessions that are supposed to be for hurricane, tornado, flooding, disaster relief sessions, and using these for political gain. This is a horrible precedent for democracy. There are other states that are in a similar situation to North Carolina who could take by example that North Carolina set. And I would hope that they don't. I hope they do the opposite. I understand Republicans and Democrats have never gotten along. We got it. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. And that is especially the case in a state like North Carolina, which has now been deemed what they call a purple state. However, what we are seeing right now is beyond politics. Our government is functional because although we are all, in a way, if you're in politics, you want to be in charge. Politicians want to have the power because that affects the change that they can bring to the community and the type of change that they want to see. But no matter what, you bow out gracefully and you allow the next person who was democratically elected to take power, because that is the fabric of our democracy, and that's what holds our democracy together. But not only did we have Pat McCrory fighting every single step of the way to recount against Roy Cooper, the new governor-elect, but now we have the Republicans trying to take power involuntarily, because I don't think anyone would approve of this much government overreach, especially Republicans who say, quote unquote, that they're against big government. Well, this, my friends, is a definition of a big government decision. The people were not consulted. They tried to do it in secret. So please, if you live in North Carolina, contact your representatives, contact your legislature in the Senate and the House, and get this repealed. Governor-elect Roy Cooper did say that if this all went through, that he would sue. Now, the legality of this is kind of up in the air because, like I said, this is unprecedented. There are, from my research, there are some legal experts that said this is actually perfectly legal, but there are others who says otherwise. Now, what's a little scary about this is the fact that, yes, although the Supreme Court in North Carolina is now Democratic, and obviously that's who Governor-elect Roy Cooper would have to take it to, if they appeal even further, it could go to a Donald Trump-dominated Supreme Court. So let us hope that it gets snuffed out at the state level, or else it could mean trouble for Governor-elect Roy Cooper and the rest of North Carolina, who has suffered greatly at the hands of a Republican-dominated government, from passing the HB2 quote-unquote bathroom bill law to losing hundreds of millions of dollars, potentially billions of dollars in revenue over the course of a few years because of said bathroom bill, and then lost billions also in a lawsuit because the federal government brought that against them because the HB2 law was considered unconstitutional. They've also lost the right to the local municipalities have lost the right to raise minimum wage in a competitive market without the state's approval, and they're not going to get the state's approval because the state said that you have to keep minimum wage at where the state determines the minimum wage should be. So North Carolina has gone through a lot. So as a nation, we should be behind North Carolina, hoping that this infringement on the democratic process will be stomped out in its tracks. And the state legislature and the Senate, who has been responsible for this, will be voted out immediately at the very next opportunity North Carolina has a chance to do so. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe. And I appreciate all the love and support that you all have been giving recently. We have been growing constantly and steadily, and we hope to continue to do so together.